How yins doing? You're listening to episode 8 of Puckin Dirty. My name is David DeJoy, and I'm the host of this pod, and I'm really grateful for you guys out there who take a listen to this hockey nonsense that I talk about here. In case you didn't figure it out already, this is a hockey podcast primarily covering, the Penguins, Florida Panthers, and any hockey pop culture out there. If that interests you, you should definitely check out our socials at Dirty J Hockey. We post frequently there, both on Instagram, not really so much on Twitter. I'm more of a Instagram type of guy. But yeah, how's it going this week? I mean, it's going pretty good for me. Uh, pretty much in like I don't want to say dog days of winter here, but towards where it starts getting really cold and you kind of start getting sick of it. Luckily, we haven't had a freeze here in Pittsburgh yet. It's pretty much been above 32 this entire winter so far, but expecting that to change. I'd even like that to change because I would really like to skate on the pond. Shout out Sean Ward. He used to get us all together for that. I would love to do another pond hockey sesh somewhere. I was thinking maybe even North Park. There's a big ass lake there. That'd be fun. But yeah, my week last week wasn't so bad. Feels just like another day or another week in winter though. I am traveling next week, or starting the 17th to the 22nd. Going to be going down to Florida where Kai's family's from, and I have some friends there. I'm not sure if I'll be seeing them or not, but going to go celebrate some part of the holiday there. Excited to really give Kai a chance to celebrate with her family as well. And if we get married, it's going to end up being my family too. So I do want to see them. Both her sister, mom, and her grandparents, who pretty much consists of her entire family down there. They're some good people. Really love them. Excited to be part of their family for a holiday, for a change. But we are coming back to here, Pittsburgh, for Christmas. For my family side stuff as well. So kind of like divorced children. We get 2 Christmases, but maybe a little better circumstances than that. And without much further ado, I do want to get into the hockey talk here. And like last week, I'm gonna roll some dice and pull a hockey card from my collection and see what we get here. So let me roll. I rolled, okay, 25 is what I rolled. So I'm just pulling out a card here. All right. So, in my collection card, 25 here, is William Nylander. Obviously, pretty elite player in Toronto. Almost, I'd say, underrated because of his compatriots there. He doesn't really get talked about as much, but he's still like a point per game in elite goal scorer. I think he's maybe. And that's even like top 4 player on Toronto. And that's like a star-studded team. Right now in 29 games played, 17 goals, 16 assists. So this guy, he's a pretty legit forward, pretty legit center. I remember he also plays wing, but I remember at one point last season, I feel like for whatever reason, no one drafted him in our fantasy hockey league, and my buddy Dunkel drafted him finally, and I don't know how, because he like I said, he's an underrated guy. He's over a point per game, and 17 goals in 29 games is nothing to snuff at there. But yeah, getting that out of the way now. To more of the general NHL hockey happenings here. First and foremost, there was a statement from the league today regarding the salary cap. Currently, the salary cap limit is $82.5 million, and the floor is 61 flat. 61 million. And just to give a brief, like what the floor means is that you have to spend that money to field a team in the NHL. If you go under that, then you're going to have to sign someone that, is more expensive and pushes you over it. And obviously the limit is, the limit, like as much as you can spend, as much as you can spend, $82.5 million. And with that being said, there are teams, that are over that cap right now due to LTIR, but without really getting into the whole cap side of things, they are increasing it. The NHL is increasing it by $1 million, which almost seems a little low, but what with from what I've been hearing from like hockey heads or just GMs and people talking about the salary cap is that this year was expected to be a low kind of bump, but after the players are done playing the escrow from the COVID shortened season, so all the money that those owners missed out on and they desperately need because they're billionaires, yeah, that money that the players earned technically and the owners didn't, they have to pay it back. So it makes sense that this small bump before maybe, I don't know how much, but I've heard it could go past $90 million in the upcoming years. And this is due to like the ESPN deal. I'm sure people have been seeing hockey more, that advertising that comes with that. And along with the advertisements on the helmets and the jerseys. And I don't know if maybe that's like taboo for some hockey fans, but I'm okay with. I know it sounds shitty, but I'm okay with that. Just because it does bring more eyes to the league, and like it's not like the other major sports aren't doing it. So if hockey only does it because hockey has that tradition of just being really rigid and kind of old boys club, I just think that's a bad reason or just no reason at all. And why not make the money while you can? These players can make more money, more people can watch the NHL and enjoy hockey, and like, isn't that the goal of having a league? It's yes to make money, but just giving people hope and something to cheer for in life. And I think it's a good thing for sure. Just to tie that all together, to get those ads on the jerseys and helmets. But that is part of the reason that it is getting increased. Obviously, there's probably a little more to read into it, but that is what it is. Next piece of news here is Brock Besser has actually been permitted to seek out a trade for himself, so his agent might negotiate a deal out of Vancouver. I heard there was 2 teams so far that made an offer. It was Vancouver and the Predators. Or I'm sorry, made an offer to Vancouver. It was the Predators and Montreal. Both these teams, I could see needing an offensive touch. With how the Predators handled their offseason, they signed Forsberg, and they have Duchesne still to long contracts. Yossi, Saros, they have a core there that I think could win. They're for some reason this season are just playing very poorly. Yossi at this point last season was probably like a point per game, and he's not at that right now. I mean, obviously he could get to that, but I think that's part of the reason why the team's struggling is that scoring on this team is just really, really down. I'm looking at their lines right now. I see that their third line and fourth line aren't even in double digits in points, and same with their second line. So scoring has really come at a premium here, which the reason they were a successful team last year, they scored. They got points from Forsberg and Granlund actually was having a better offensive season. I wouldn't mind Besser going there. I do think it would be interesting to see him in a Predators uniform. They don't really have the cap space, so I wonder what they would send back. I could see Matthias Ekholm, to be honest. He makes 6.25 mil, and really he's not a bad player. Not an super offensively gifted guy, but he can contribute here and there. He's a left-handed shot, and he's a defenseman who really is a good defenseman. I think he's one of the better on, maybe the second best on their team. So with that being said, I initially kind of thought, Besser last week. I thought that the return would be a player that's, on defense or at least a defensive-minded player and could contribute now. And I kind of think he kind of fits both those categories. Be interesting. I obviously am not in the GM rooms or maybe in the agent's room at this point, but we'll see. Montreal, that's interesting to me because I do feel like Montreal is definitely a more offensively gifted team than the Predators, at least. But I don't know if goal scoring is exactly what they need from their guys right now. I was under the impression that their defense and goalies kind of were their issue. I mean, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Kirby Doc, like those kids. I mean, they're good. Like that is going to be your kind of core. I feel like for the next few years, at least 3 or 4 years here. And they have Dadonov, who really hasn't worked out, so maybe there he slots in the second line or first line and bumps one of those younger kids down. But we'll see. I mean, what would the return be? I don't really know. Maybe they offer like Josh Anderson or it's hard for me to say. Maybe Joel Edmondson, but to me that's tough. I don't feel like Montreal would really want to give up defense. But maybe there's another side. Maybe I'm looking at this from the wrong angle. Maybe they want scoring back, and maybe Hoffman's on the way to Vancouver. Or I do feel like Josh Anderson could be a part of it, because I feel like that's the kind of player that Jim Rutherford might go for. So it'd be interesting to see. I haven't heard Penguins making an offer, and that's really because I don't believe like they really should or could. We'll get more into the Penguins, but they are on a 6-game win streak right now. So another little thing, another little news story here, I guess. Not really a news story, more of just something funny, but funny in a bad way. Thomas Chabot, he's on my fantasy team, so I kind of follow him. He plays for the Senators. And the other day, I probably a couple games by now, he was mad on the bench, and he like just took his stick and baseball, swung it next to him, and he hit Travis Hamonic right in the face. And it was just like the oddest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, why are you so angry on the bench, and why does your anger turn into smacking your stick on the bench? Like, what an odd, like, just process mentally. I don't really understand why. Like, I get if you're on the ice, slash the board, slash a bar or something, but like on the bench, I feel like you have to be more composed. You're not the only guy there. You don't want to injure your teammate because you're a jackass. Like, yeah, thought that was really weird. Ovi is now at goal 797, which is 3 short of the 800, which is a pretty huge milestone. Only Gordie Howe and the great one, Wayne Gretzky himself, have ever eclipsed 800. And according to some sources, I think Gretzky said it himself, he's going to follow Ovi around as he gets closer to the record of 894 goals. And if I had to give my opinion on it, I really do hope that he breaks the goal record. I think Ovi, winning a cup, getting the goal record would just even more solidify his status as a legendary goal scorer. And I'll be honest, I kind of want to see Gretzky's his records broken. I think it's kind of lame that there's these really, really old records that are just tough to beat because the league was so different, and the parity has definitely increased now, so it's harder to score. Back then, I mean, I've always heard the analogy, it's plumbers, or not analogy, but story that it's plumbers that he played against. He was just scoring all over them. But congrats to Ovi. Would really, really like to see someone actually break a goal scoring record, or a record of Gretzky's that's important at all. And there's my dogs freaking out. I'm gonna pause it for a sec. So, yeah. So I hope Ovi breaks the record. Letang, he's returning to the lineup only 12 days after suffering a stroke. He only missed 5 games, and in his return, he led the Penguins with 22 minutes, 14 seconds of ice time. He played with P.O. Joseph the entire time while he's on the ice, and he didn't play on the top power play unit, but he did see some time with the second group. And what a crazy 12 days I'm sure it was for Christopher Letang to go from having a medical emergency to like playing 20 minutes of hockey, and I'm glad that he was cleared for his own sake. Like I said last week, I think it's good for your mentals, be probably really, really draining and like as a person, just terrible to suffer such a sad circumstance if he couldn't play anymore. So happy for him. I'll talk about some of the Penguins more here, including P.O. Joseph later on in the Penguin segment here. And my last news story or interesting story of the week was Jack Hughes playing the longest NHL shift ever, which was 6 minutes and 2 seconds. Jack Hughes has really stepped into his role as number one center on the New Jersey Devils. He leads New Jersey with 33 points. He seems to really have taken that step forward. Like his teammates have been quoted, and this is like Jesper Bratt, I think I'm quoting here, he's really taken a step forward in his development as a player, and they really like seeing him do better and progress. He's the 2019 first overall pick, and I think he has to be one of the best, if not the best, since Austin Matthews in 2016. And that's like Owen Power, I think Darlene as well, Lafreniere. It's like not exactly crazy drafts, but definitely good players. And Jack Hughes has to be one of the best, if not the best out of them since Matthews. And moving on, let's go on to the Eastern Conference here. Kind of wanted to break down some of the standings here in the NHL. First and foremost, the Eastern Conference, East Coast, Beast Coast, they are definitely a better division or conference than the West at this point. The playoff line in the East here is 34 points, and I will I'll get into that a little bit more. But I wanted to really speak about just the top teams at the moment here. Boston, New Jersey, Toronto, even the Penguins, they're kind of starting to pull away a little bit. I mean, obviously the teams who went on the insanely long win streaks are far ahead than the Penguins. They are both 6 and 7 points up on the Pens. But the Leafs are within range with 4 points. If the Pens beat the Leafs those two games, they definitely could have been the 42-point getter. So pretty interesting here. But the Pens being on this 6-game win streak, I feel like is starting to open up people's eyes. I really do think the Penguins are a top team, if not the top team in the Metro. Yeah, I know that's a little crazy to say with how the Devils are playing. Currently, the playoff line, both the Rangers and the Islanders are in the wild card spots for the NHL, which is 35 points, 34 points. This could really start getting interesting because the Metro is starting to win. The Pens are on the 6-game win streak. The Devils, they're obviously on top, but the Penguins got that 6-game win streak, and they're second in the division right now. They beat Vegas, the Blues, Buffalo twice, Columbus, and the Stars. So some decent teams in there, not just all pushovers. But Carolina is third. They remain near the top. I mean, they have 2 games on hand in the Pens, and they actually play the Pens this week. So pretty huge game, and I'll break that down a little bit later. And then the Rangers and Islanders. The Rangers are actually in a 4-game win streak themselves. Pretty interesting. They're kind of surging. Seems that this might be the actual Rangers that we've expected. We will see. It's still, they have 30 games played, so they still have some more games played than even the Islanders, who are right behind them. So we'll see. I think, one of their issues is that they just rely way too much on their top line to score. And beyond that, it's kind of barren. I don't know how good Lafreniere and Capo Caco were really supposed to be, but they really don't seem like answers to whatever question the Rangers have. Maybe as depth forwards, there's nothing wrong with drafting a guy, I guess, first or second overall, and having him just sit in your system for a long time if he functions properly. But I just feel like these guys were built as a little bit better scorers than they put up. Lafreniere has only 13 points and Kako has 10, so who knows? I've actually heard some criticism of of their coach. Oh man, their coach, uh, Gerard Gerard Gallant. Gerard Gallant, who used to be Florida coach, Vegas coach, but I've heard criticism of him for playing Jimmy VC so much on the first line, and I feel like that's a fair criticism because he has really been bouncing around for a long time, and not like bouncing around like he's a scorer. He was getting moved in deals. He just like has never really settled anywhere. And I remember when he broke into the league, I really wanted the Pens to sign him because he was a Hobie Baker Award, which is like the MVP for college hockey, I think. But I thought he was better. Um, Definitely think it's a fair criticism of him. But we'll see. I think the Rangers are interesting. I think there's more to give here. I think Igor is still their best player though, for sure. And not to be outdone themselves, but the Capitals are also on a 4-game win streak. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. This is a team I've pretty much written off, and right now they're kind of sneaking right behind the Islanders and Rangers, maybe going a little bit under the radar. And if Owie continues to score, I mean, this team's going to continue to compete. Like, there's no reason why they can't. I do think injuries have completely derailed their season, so they probably should have been better, but that's really kind of conjecture and not really valid, you know? Should have, could have, would have, really. Sorry, that was some good water. The Atlantic teams here in the East, I still think, you know, the Bruins and Maple Leafs are separating themselves from the pack. I almost want to call them lock for playoffs at this point. The Bruins have 45 points. Leafs have 42. I don't want to say lock, but like I really, if I am a betting man, I would bet that these teams make playoffs. Not saying the odds are probably good or good in your favor right now, but they probably are a lock at this point. At this point, though, I can't really see my Predators Predators. Why do I keep saying that? But I can't see my Panthers making it into the playoffs. I saw a statement from their GM or coach that he still believes in this team, and I was like, dude, like you're just saying that because you have to say it. Because I feel like the writing's on the wall. And that was their GM, and I mean, obviously, I feel like the GM would say that he has the most skin in the game in terms of putting a roster together. He, you know, makes the decisions along with other people, but he's the one saying yes to them or signing off on it. And I've been critical of the Panthers, and it's because last season they won the President's Trophy and they set a franchise record for wins and points at 122 points in 58 wins. And at this point in the season, they're going like 40-40, like basically like nowhere close to the success that they had. And I'm very critical of hiring Paul Maurice. I just don't think he's a good coach, admittedly. And I think Paul Maurice kind of makes excuses where, you know, his team has been, lackluster. In Winnipeg, he resigned. He quit basically on his team and said, "Oh, they need to hear another voice. They're just not listening." And to me, that's just like a bad attitude to invite into the locker room. And I don't know if the team's so much bought in to what he's saying. So could be why that the Panthers are just not doing well in general. And there is some little jockeying for position here. I could see Detroit sneaking in, even though I'm not impressed with their play, with their consistency. But they are currently I think 3 points, maybe 2 points out of a wild card spot, and they're pretty sneaky good. If they could win some of their overtime losses there, they have 6 of them. They really could be even past Tampa in the third wild card or third spot in the Atlantic. So definitely an interesting interesting spot there. But I really wanted to focus on the Western Conference more. because I think there's a little bit more going on there. I think there really is only one top team pulling away, and that's Vegas. Otherwise, it's a pretty big log jam, and I feel like there's a few reasons for that. While there's no guarantees of like who's going to get in, who's not, but I think there's some good indications of who will make playoffs. Um, teams like Vegas, Winnipeg, Dallas, Seattle, I think they're all strong candidates right now. They're positive in goal differential. They've had success the entire year at this point, so 30 games in, and it's hard for me to pitch a wagon to any of the other teams just because I feel like there's some more major issues where I mean every team has their issues. Winnipeg, Dallas, those guys. I think these teams have more of an issue. I got so right now we got L.A. the Kings here, 35 points in playoff spot. Minnesota right behind them, 32. Edmonton 32 behind Minnesota. Calgary has 31 and Colorado has 30. And, I mean they're 5 through 9 in the standings in the West right now. Edmonton being wild card 1, Calgary being wild card 2. And really, like who's gonna make playoffs here? Like what do we think? And I know this might seem shocking, but I just because of all of the jumping, I feel like LA could be bumped out, probably by Minnesota, maybe even by Minnesota and Edmonton, out of their spot right now. I could see them being even not making playoffs. I think a negative goal differential and their inconsistency issues really makes it challenging for me to see them as a really big threat. I don't really think they have, tough playoff style hockey either, So I'm not really bought into their team, especially with their goalie issues. And Jonathan Quick is just too old to really be like a starting netminer in the NHL right now. I think he should be a good backup. I just don't think he should be a starting NHL goalie. But we'll see. I think Minnesota has their own issues, and some of those issues are just they're underachieving. I feel like their team's better than they really are showing on the ice. Kaprizov. He has really been taking off this year. Once again, I mean, if you followed hockey last year, if you followed it really closely and watched the Wild, you would have seen him and his skill, and he's a good player, really good player. Reminds me of Panarin. I mean, really, maybe a little bit better of a goal scorer. But yeah, I just feel like they've really underachieved as a team, and having Ryan Reeves on your team, I feel like is just like, just why? Like, he doesn't play very much, so what's even the point of having like this goon? And I was critical of the Pens when they acquired him. It's just like, why? Like, you have Moose, you have Marcus Foligno, like he's supposed to be like the same kind of player. And this is maybe a setup for Brock Besser. I don't know. I could definitely see the Wild trying to make a push here, maybe moving Foligno, because I mean Reeves is a cheaper option of a goon than Foligno, and I mean they have some scoring in Matt Boldy and Eriksson Ek, but like they really need help there. I don't think that they're a playoff team with how they're configured right now. I mean, maybe if they start actually achieving what I initially thought they were, but right now I feel like they could easily go on a bad losing streak here and get right out of playoffs. Especially Fleury's poor play recently. He's not been looking as good as he once was, so that's tough for me to watch, to be honest. But moving on to Edmonton, I think their issue is their defense and goalies are just also bad. They obviously have the elite scoring. It's just, is that elite scoring going to take off like it did last year towards the end, and they're just going to carry them to the playoffs? We'll see. I mean, to be determined. But I would have them as one of my wild card or better teams, just because scoring, that can win you games in regular season, but it can definitely dry up and be tougher to win in playoffs. And Edmonton saw that last year. Calgary's issue, I think, is lack of scoring depth. They lost, Johnny Gaudreau and to Chuck, and Weegar is in that trade. They got Weegar and Huberdeau, and Weegar's just been like meh. He's on my fantasy team. He has like 6 points in 30 games. It's like shit, bro. Like, what are you doing? And Jonathan Gaudreau is also, not looking good with that contract. For the point total, he's only has 18 in 26 games. He had like 100 in like 20 last season or something like that. So huge drop off of his pace. He had 115 and 80 games played. So a really big drop off of his pace, and they signed him pretty long term to a pretty long deal. So, oh boy, this definitely has a potential to look really, really bad. I think this contract, if they don't get some scoring help, like Backlund is probably a second line center. Kadri is not playing as well as he did last season. Obviously, everyone could have told you that. Mangiapane is just not there, not everything there. Like, I feel like something's missing there. Blake Coleman, I thought, was a better player. Just I feel like their scoring is really their issue, and maybe adding some scoring there could really make a change. I just feel like players like Huberdeau, he's not used to playing with like Backlund and Toffoli, and they're good players. They're like second line, third line. No, that first line, second line, but definitely second line first. But they're not like the top end talent like Barkov, or Anthony Duclair. Even I feel like Duclair has a better scoring touch than both these guys. So we'll see how they play off. But I do think their scoring is going to really bring them down here. And the last team, and at this point, I almost feel like they could definitely be kind of like what breaks the bracket here, where teams are going to shift down because they're so far down, and that's Colorado. 26 games played, 30 points, and that's pretty awful for the defending champs here. But their issues are really the injury bug. It's what happens when you play into the summer for the NHL, and probably why I've heard rumblings of like, oh, hey, we should shorten the season by 6 games. Never going to happen, but that's just an argument, I guess. But I do think I think Colorado would make a move in this playoff race. I think they would only move up. I don't think they can go any further. I think this is their floor right now. I think they could even Minnesota's in that third central spot. I think they could push Minnesota into that wild card slot, and that makes it even harder to get into the playoffs, because I do think the Wild are better, at least roster makeup, than the Kings and Edmonton and even Calgary. But do they achieve those, that level? I will see. They have to be determined. But I do think they could technically be the buster here. And I like I said before, I feel like McDavid and Draisaitl could definitely carry the team to the playoffs. I just, address the elephant in the room for them. The goaltending in defense is bad. Like, the goaltending, I feel like Jack Campbell can play well in front of a decent defense. Like the Leafs, they get hate, but their defense is not as awful as Edmonton's is and was. So definitely be interesting to see. Interesting to see this playoff race. I think it's going to be closer there than it is in the East. And that makes for exciting hockey towards the end of the season, where stuff seems to start winding down. And that's kind of like the playoff race for both divisions here. The other question, I think there's obviously the good and the playoff teams, but who's going to get that first overall pick? And as of right now, I have 4 teams. The Coyotes, the Jackets, the Blue Jackets, the Ducks, and the Blackhawks. And I feel like those 4 teams definitely all have a shot at it, but some more so than others. Right now, I would expect Anaheim or Chicago to get the first overall pick. These teams are kind of built to fail, and I don't think they're going to produce a good record, and I think they're going to have the highest chance at first overall. But I think with that being said, with them being those awful teams, they're definitely going to have to make moves to acquire more draft capital. And what are those moves going to be? For the Ducks, they have unrestricted free agents that are defensemen, and defensemen seem to fetch a pretty penny in the league. They have Klingberg, Shattenkirk, Kolikov, and Beaulieu, yeah, he's a French Canadian name. Nothing that really pops off the paper or says I will be on another team this season, but something to track. Out of the 4, I could see Klingberg on the move for sure. He has a lot of offensive upside, and before being let go or traded actually to the Ducks, I thought he was a good player in Dallas. I really didn't think he would lay such a goose egg this year, and he signed a $7 million deal. There's no way in hell he gets that kind of money next paycheck. So maybe the team that he gets traded to, if he gets traded to, will also sign him to a deal, or maybe the Ducks want to keep him. Who knows? I don't know exactly. I can imagine that they're pretty disappointed in his offensive output. On the Ducks as well, I'd like to see John Gibson get traded to a contender, but he has $6.4 million deal for 5 years, and given his above average numbers for the last few years, who knows if the teams are going to take a chance on that. I consider him above average still, and maybe he can dip into that elite under a better coach, better system, better team. But the Ducks do not really have that team. Lastly, on the Ducks, they don't have another first round pick this year, so maybe they want to acquire another pick in a super deep draft. I think there's the incentive there. I do think they should make a move personally. The Blackhawks on the other hand are kind of different, where the Ducks are a younger team already in that rebuild. I feel like the Blackhawks only accepted their fate like this offseason. They still have Kane and Taves, and I feel like they're some pretty lucrative trade bait at this point. As long as their salary cap is retained. They both make $10.5 million. There's no way anyone can afford that right now. Along with Kane and Taves, Max Domi and Anthony Athanasiou. I hate that name. Athanasiou. Damn, hard to say. But Anthony Athanasiou, they're all worth considering, and they're all unrestricted free agents at the end of the year. The Hawks have 2 first-round picks this year and next year, so they're both Tampa's, and they came in that Brandon Hagel trade. But they have the ability to there's moving parts there. 4 first-round picks the next 2 years. That's pretty damn good. They are top 10 protected, so they're not going to be lottery draft picks from Tampa, but you're not really expecting that from Tampa. So I think that the Hawks are in a better opportunity, chance here to really make a move. I don't know when they'll do it, probably towards the deadline where teams are really starting to get desperate. But we'll see. And, to answer my original question here at this segment is, who was going to get that first overall pick? I think the Hawks will be in the position to get it. Maybe the best position to get the best odds, while the Ducks, have a worse roster at this point, in my opinion, and they're a younger team. I mentioned, the Hawks players like Domi, Kane, Taves, Athanasiou. I mentioned those guys, and if they are dealt, the return is probably not going to be that great, seeing that they're probably going to get draft capital out of it. So if it's by trade deadline, they make these trades, that they could see some, serious drop off of play, and they're already terrible. So it would be an interesting, tank. It would really be a tank to trade those players, all of those players away at least. And if I'm the GM, why not at this point? Like, I hate to say it, but the Hawks' legacy was kind of tainted by the sexual assault on a player by a coach, and maybe just cutting those ties right now would be a great way to just completely move on from that era and draft Connor Bedard, and fans will forget quickly. I know that sounds terrible, but if the franchise is successful, I the fans will go there. It's as simple as that. Chicago's a big town, Um, but enough about other teams. Let's talk about what you came here for. Let's talk about the Penguinos. They're definitely Penguinos at this point. They've won 6 games in a row. They are on an absolute tear right now. I would not want to play the Penguins right now. They beat starting the win streak Vegas, Blues, Buffalo twice, CBJ, Dallas. I said it before, but some decent teams there besides really Columbus and Buffalo. You could go either way. I feel like on a given night they're still one of the best scoring teams. They're just terrible at playing defense. But to really review those games, I didn't watch the game versus Columbus, but I watched both of the Sabres games and some of the Dallas one. I predicted a 4-0 win versus Columbus. I saw Columbus score the first goal, and I was like, ah, shit. I think I was recording the pod at that time. Actually, I might have actually watched that one now that I think about it. But it's good to see a 4-1 win. I mean, that was expected. Like, I just can't see Columbus really beating the Pens with how their roster is right now. Unless the Pens really fuck up, which they didn't, so that's good. Sabres, the first game, the Pens won 4-3 in overtime. This was an exciting game. I predicted a 5-4 game, so I'm glad to see a little bit less scoring, better defense from the Pens. But it was an exciting game, and when some of the best offensive players in the league are on the ice, it's fun to watch. I think this game was really highlighted by the end, which was Jeff Skinner cross-checking Gensel in the face, and he didn't miss any time. So he's okay. But Jeff Skinner gave the Pens a 5-minute power play, and they also got a 3-game suspension for himself. So pretty good for the Pens. Pretty good deal, I'd say, if Gensel didn't get hurt. Pens got set up. This was as the seconds were dying. The Pens got set up a 5-minute major for almost the entire overtime period, and it's no surprise that they scored. I think Jeff Carter scored to beat the Sabres there, and exciting. Good to see. I saw that Brock McGinn is starting to really score again, and he's just consistently scoring. 8 goals this season. He fits in well to the system, and I think he's good on our third line. I think him and Raquel have continued to impress me with their play, and I even saw Heinen get on that score sheet, so good for him as well. Second game was in Pittsburgh. I predicted a 3-1 win, and guess what? 3-1 win. Shocker, I know. Gotta, give myself a pat on the back predicting that one right. But the Pens really handled the Sabres in a different way, and it was a great sight to see, I think. The Pens really show their tenacity and drive to win, I think, in these kind of games where they limit the other team. They're playing a system hockey and effectively, and they're beating teams they should beat. They really shouldn't be losing to Buffalo. Not yet. Buffalo isn't that experienced, and I don't think they defend that well. And a part of my thinking as well is, they play a back-to-back game. You'd think the younger team would have the advantage, but the Pens really showed that that's not the case, winning 3-1 there. The captain here, Sidney Crosby, he scored 2 goals this game, both at even strength, and he had an assist on the power play. And I just really think that he should be considered in the MVP conversation. 38 points, 17 goals, 21 assists in 29 games played, and he's playing 20 minutes a night. And yeah, there's better candidates for scoring, but I don't think there's a better candidate for a player who's MVP to his team and the league. I guess we'll really see as maybe the season progresses here. Maybe there'll be more talking about it, but I really think it's just injustice to not talk about Sidney Crosby's scoring ability and at an older age, really. And a lot of his points have come from even strength. So it's not like he's scoring power play goals where, Ovi sits in his office and just claps at home. He's scoring when there's 5 guys out on the ice, and that's not always easy for some players. The Pens played a good game. I think DeSmith also played a good game on that second game. The only goal that beat him was a deflection by Peyton Krebs, which, I mean, it's hard to save a deflection sometimes. I think the Pens power play in that game really kind of started to really show what they could become. I think in the last 6 games they have a streak of a goal scored on the power play, so they're really starting to click there. I think I have some power play numbers later on in my other stats category here. But if the Pens power play starts to get hot, I mean, Sid could put up 2 points a game easily. But moving on to Smith here, I was really kind of bearish on him. I didn't think he was a really great backup goalie, but he's at least proven me wrong so far this season. His record looks bad, 4-5-1, but he has a 9.16 save percentage and a 2.86 goals against, which are pretty good. Actually, it's a 2.8 goals against, not 2.86, but pretty good stats especially for a backup goalie. You like to see the success. I mean, if the Pens are buying into a system that defends well, I really do think you could probably put in any goalie and he would probably play well for the Pens. But that's not to discredit DeSmith, but that's more to credit the Penguins themselves as a team. Hockey's a team game, and I'm sure they'll give credit. I'm sure DeSmith would give credit. The guys in front of me are playing better. So it's a team game, and I'd like to give everyone the credit they're due. The last game the Pens played, which was last night, was the Stars, and I'm actually glad this didn't come out the way I predicted. I predicted a 3-2 loss. Pens played a 2-1 dub for the boys. And I mean, I feel like this is like an obvious thing, but I'm happy to be wrong here. The Penguins played a strong defensive game against a very good offensive team who's ranked 3rd in goals in the league. I will say there's some credit to the Stars as well. They pretty much limited the Pens the entire time. I did say Ottinger might be steal a game, but I think Jarry kind of did in this one. He's been playing some excellent hockey right now, and while he might not be as big profile or flashy as the other goalies in the league, he's putting up great numbers: 13-3-3, 9.20 save percentage, 2.68, 2.67 goals against, and those are elite numbers. He's ranked 19 and 6th, respectively, in those stats. Actually, I might have got that backwards. He's ranked 6th in save percentage and ranked 19th in goals against. But goals against is kind of, skewed. There's players that have played half of his games in the top 15, so I feel like that kind of skews it. But it's just proving that he's playing at a level that, when he's on his game, he's a top 5 goalie in the league. I feel like he could have his best career year this year, and be great to see. Great to see. I'd love to see it. But yeah, I think he really stole that game versus the Stars. That's like as much of a playoff game as you can get without playing the playoffs. It's a 2-1 win, gritty, 34 seconds left, Malkin scores. People are playing the system, blocking shots, really sacrificing for the team, and you like to see it, and like to see it coming out uninjured first off, and with a win. So, love to see it. Hopefully the Pens can continue this kind of play throughout this week here. And to get into the previews here, the Pens play 3 times this week, and they play one of my teams here, the Panthers. And if you're a usual listener of the pod, this is my second favorite team, but that I'm also immensely disappointed with this team. They have not been playing up to the standard I think that's been set in the last few years. The Panthers are on a streak, a better team, and they have the confidence that the Panthers don't currently possess. And with the Panthers losing their last two games, 4-1 and 5-2 to the Kraken, I think the Penguins will continue what they did against Dallas, is just expose the Panthers' lack of depth, both scoring and defensively, and let the Panthers shoot those non-danger chance shots that they tend to shoot. I would not be surprised if the Panthers put up 40 shots against DeSmith or Jarry. I assume Jarry'd play, but yeah, he's definitely going to play. What am I saying? But yeah, I expect there to be a high shot counts, but I don't really expect the scoring chances to be there. Spencer Knight, who's been better of the two goalies in Florida, is injured, and Bobrovsky has been playing like he's been allergic to pucks. So if he's in the net, I really could see a 5-2 win against the Pens, for the Pens. The Penguins will win 5-2. Geez, get marbles out of my mouth here. But Alex Lyon is the Knights' replacement here. He's a career AHL goalie in the NHL. He has a .895 save percentage, .318 goals against. Like I said, I think it'd be a disappointment if the Pens lost. I think they should crush the Panthers 5-2. Moving on. Next game versus the Panthers. Panthers are 15-6-6. By the way, the Florida, I think I said that just fucked up. The Panthers were 13-12-4. The Carolina Hurricanes are 15-6-6. I would really love nothing more than just to crush Carolina, like a 4-0 game. I feel like there was some bullshit that ended the game 2 weeks ago. OT was ended by an obviously missed and dangerous hit. And yeah, there's some blame on the Penguins for essentially giving up. I think they were more worried about, their teammate being injured. I think it was Rust. And they were shocked that there was no call. The whole bench freaked out. And I expect this game to be similar, a low, tight scoring affair. But you know what? I'm predicting a 4-1 win for the Pens. I have 3-1 written down, but you know what? I'm getting the red pen out, and I'm changing it to 4-1. I'd like to see them crush the Hurricanes, and you know what? They're going to do it. You heard it here first. But yeah, I just don't see Carolina putting up a lot of goals, and their team is not meant to score goals. It's meant to defend, and I feel like the Pens could definitely, counterpunch their way to a 4-1 game and even dominate the game. Like they're a good team right now, and I know Petrie is out for a few games possibly, but I feel like next man up, and it's they can play. Like our defense has the depth this year, so I feel like that's not necessarily the biggest blow right now. But yeah, I think a 4-1 win for the Pens playing the Hurricanes. Next in third last game this week is against the Rangers. It'll actually be on next Tuesday. But 15, 10 and 5, 35 points. The Rangers on that winning streak, 4 games. They beat the Avs, the Knights, the Devils. They might have found their identity as a team, but it's still a little bit early. I feel maybe inconsistent. Their win on the Avs against the Avs might seem impressive on paper, but if you dig into the details, the Avs are filled with injuries and AHL players. So, a good team should be beating the Avs, maybe even by a wider margin than the Rangers did, which I think was an OT win. I think the Rangers, can raise their level of play when they play the Pengs. So we'll see when the Penguins play them. I expect a higher, scoring chance, dangerous for goalies, exciting for us, exciting game. Maybe the Rangers, will be a little bit more tired. They do play another game more than the Penguins this week, so maybe that's a little bit of an edge. I've been impressed with the Rangers lately, so I can't see a really high getting out of the hand scoring affair, but maybe a 4-2 win for the Pens. Yeah, sound good? You better believe it. And yeah, that was that's all the teams the Pens play this week. I like going a little bit back on the Rangers. I've mentioned their scoring is just not there beyond the first line, and I think now they're starting to break it up. Um, It'd be interesting to see if maybe they make a move for someone eventually. I can't really see them moving on from one of their early picks like Kako or Lafreniere, but we'll see. Maybe it's time to move one of the young guys. Like maybe it's time to actually, build a better team. I'm not sure what exactly they're gonna get in return there, but we'll see. Moving on, players to watch this week. I think Jarry and DeSmith are one of my choices, and this might be like a little bit of a cheat here, but I feel like this duo is playing as one of the best duos in the NHL right now. They've been playing huge in net, giving the Penguins, the chances they need to win the games they play. The 6-game win streak is only because, the goaltending has been there. They've only given up more than 2 goals twice, once to the Knights and the other to the Sabres. And there was just 3 goals each of those times. And they won both those games, just so you know. I think both those teams are both in the top 10 metrics offensively. So I just feel like that's a fact in the matter that like the Pens have bought into the system. The goalies are playing well. It's fun to watch a team that's well oiled like the Penguins here. So yeah, I think, DeSmith, maybe even could potentially add him in fantasy hockey as a streaming option here. We'll see. I might do it, depending on what team he draws this week. He might not even draw one. Who knows? So we'll see. I would definitely rather Jarry play all 3 because he's my fantasy goalie, but we'll see. Second player to watch, or I guess third player to watch, is Chris Letang. I really have no idea how the hell he came back in 12 days after a stroke, but I'm glad he's back in uniform, and I'm glad he's healthy. And, I think Petrie filled in adequately for his absence, but we'll see what happens with Letang back. I think Petrie actually kind of like infused the power play. I think I said this earlier. They're 8 for 21 with Petrie, in the last 6 games. So not bad. Not last 6 games they scored a goal, so that's not bad. But definitely, Letang has the chance to be number 1 defenseman again. He was playing on the second pair. We'll see what he does. I really hope he takes that step that I think he has still. Not that he's had a bad season this year, but he's definitely not had the numbers that I'm used to seeing. He only has 1 goal and 11 assists through 23 games, which isn't bad for most players, but most players aren't Chris Letang. So definitely another player to watch. And keeping this on, that core is Evgeny Malkin, of course. He's on a 6-game point streak. Weird that the Pens are winning games. 1 goal, 8 assists, and last night he was the decider of that match. He went Geno mode and cleaned up on a pretty sweet, drive to the net from Rust. There was 34 seconds left, and I mean, he was pumped, and it's always good to see your favorite players, display the good emotions of hockey, not the, Geno mad, get penalty, so good to see him. And, watch out. I mean, 6-game point streak, 9 points. And once again, I've heard nothing about this, and damn, he's one of the best players. Not hockey 100 apparently, but Mr. 101 himself, which is bullshit. But yeah, take a look out for Malkin. He could go off. He could, he could put up over a point per game again, and I would not be surprised. I would actually expect that from him with how he's been playing this year. A 200-foot game too. Better than in recent seasons. I think he looks healthier and stronger than he has before. And my last player here to watch is Pierre-Olivier Joseph. P.O. Joseph has scored his first against the Stars, and that was a huge, huge goal. And that goal kind of highlights his recent success in the NHL. I've heard plenty of times from Sullivan, just reading quips from him. This coaching staff trusts him, and I think that trust is paying off. He's finding that chemistry with other defensemen, with other players on the Penguins, and he can drive the offense when he's on the ice. He is mobile as a defenseman. He's a fun guy to watch, similar to Letang. He's definitely one of the better defensemen, two-way defensemen in the league, but you probably won't hear much about him, not yet at least. And I remember it was the Kessel trade where we got him. I remember being pretty hype when we got him back. So I'd like to see him, hit that hype. And right now, I think he is. I think he's playing better than expected, especially from like how he kind of struggled last year, at least. I'm going to definitely watch him a little more closely. Maybe the closest out of all of these players this week, the upcoming weeks, because I'd definitely like to see him contribute more to the offense as he gets comfortable in the NHL in the system. But we will see. Moving on here to the other news and the other stats here. Mike Sullivan, through 700 games, has 384 wins. It puts him 8th all time at that point. John Cooper leads that category, and he has 426 assists, 26 wins in that time period. So that's kind of insane. I mentioned Petrie missing the upper Dallas game with an upper body injury. Hopefully he's not out long term. I don't really know. I didn't really see the injury, but I was actually kind of surprised he was on the injury report. So I wouldn't be surprised if he came back pretty quickly. Lastly, just the power play and PK numbers. Power plays at 20.41, PKs at 82.42, 102.82 combined. That's putting them above league average. Like I said, to get to that like higher end 109, 108, that's where you're really elite special teams wise. So I think the Pens can get up there. Their PK is really good, and I think the only thing limiting them is their power play itself. So we'll see where that gets with maybe Sid heating up here, or who knows, maybe P.O. Joe or Malkin himself. But I do think that their special teams could definitely get better, and if it gets better, then the Penguins are going to keep winning. And to finish off this here pod, I'm going to do the power rankings that I always do. Give me one moment as I share this screen. Here it is. There it is. It's shared. All right. So start with the top here. Got Bruins, Devils, Leafs, and Vegas. Leafs are on a 3-game win streak. Devils are on a 2-game losing streak. Nothing really moved here. I think Vegas actually moved to the bottom of this elite list. We'll see what happens. I don't really expect these teams to leave that section. I think they're 4 of the best teams in the NHL right now. And with that being said, playoffs, I have the Penguins in the number 1 slot, touching on that elite category perhaps. 6-game win streak's tough, and they beat the Dallas Stars, who are right behind them in this order. We'll see their schedule. They have the Hurricanes and the Sharks. God damn it, and the Rangers again this week. So they got a pretty tough schedule. Being the Panthers, I would expect it, but these other 2 teams, could go either way. And if they do get those wins, the 9-game win streak, I think they might touch elite. We'll see. Obviously, the other teams will have more to say, but we'll see. Moving on, I had Dallas behind them. Haven't really moved very much. I think they're a top 10 team. Same with the Jets, Hurricanes, Lightning. Most of these teams have kind of slid back because teams have slid in front of them. Penguins, Stars, Jets, all have slid, past these teams. I think they're better than the others in this playoff bracket thing here. I do have the Islanders as that last spot, and I know in the rankings or in the standings they're flip-flopped with the Rangers, but not completely sold yet on the Rangers as much as I've been sold on the Islanders. And with that being said, the Rangers are first in that fringe division section, whatever. And part of the reason I Hold on one second. Part of the reason I have them in that fringe is this: I'm not 100% sold. I do think they could be in that playoff bracket. Yet to be determined. I still think there's some issues on their roster. I wrote on this. Next is the Kings, and I wrote fifth next to them, and that's because they're currently fifth in the West, and all of those teams that I've listed, there's only what 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're, you know, I feel like this is just showing that like the fifth best in the West is on par with what I think the playoff like wild card teams are in the East. So I feel like that just goes to show like really how it's set here. I think the East is the better conference. After the Kings, I got the Wild, I got the Oilers. I think these teams are all pretty much interchangeable at this point. I got Detroit next, and honestly, they could even be maybe better than those teams, but I think they're just young and inconsistent still. We got the Capitals next on a 4-game heater. We'll see. I mean, 7-2-1 last 10. One of the better teams in the last 10 games. So we'll see how good they actually can achieve here with all those injuries that they've had. Panthers, they're in that fringe category, and they're just sinking further back and further back. Avs are there because of the injuries. Calgary's underachieving. Predators look bad. Montreal beating the Calgary Flames, but still just looking like potential bad team. Getting into the bad teams, you got Vancouver, no surprise. Sabres, no surprise. Senators, Blues, Flyers, Sharks, just same old at this point. I don't even know if this list has changed, and I do change it every week. Like, I don't know if those teams have ever even touched beyond bad. Maybe the Sabres, but yeah, not so much anymore. And like I said, the Bedard hunt here. We got Coyotes, Blue Jackets, Hawks, Ducks. Man, these teams suck. I've talked about at least the Hawks and Ducks here. I do think the Hawks are going to be the ones with the first overall pick, but we'll see. They can't get much worse than right now, but we'll excited to see how bad it can really get, I will say. And that's all I got here for this week. I just wanted to give a little bit of an update. I don't think I'm going to be recording next week, the 20th. I'm pretty sure. I'm not pretty sure. 100% sure. I'm going to be in Florida. I'm going to kind of take it as a vacation, take a week off. Done this 8 weeks in a row now. I'm kind of impressed with myself. I didn't really think I was going to get even past episode 3, but I get some support from my friends and loved ones, and I appreciate it. Appreciate anyone who really takes the listen. And next time I'm on, I expect to interview my friend Joey. It'd be a good time to interview him during winter break, especially because he's a busy guy. He's building rockets or some shit in Florida, so definitely an interesting person to talk to, and I'm looking forward to it. And with that being said, thank you for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you, and let's go Pens.